I'm Louis Moroni, and this is Constraints the Podcast from Hi-Fi Handiwork, a 20-episode series. Each episode is a chat with a guest from a creative industry about a project obstacle they've experienced, viewed through the lens of project management's three constraints of scope, time, and budget. Further insights and commentary can be found in the show notes. We hope you enjoy the program. One of the reasons I enjoy teaching is it challenges me to explain and qualify common concepts that might otherwise be taken for granted. Take the concept of creative industries, for example. Recently, I asked the students in my project management class to define what a creative industry is, and after we covered some of the standard sectors of publishing, art, film, and dance, the conversation got more interesting. We all agreed that the output of creative industry is some kind of creative product. Though car manufacturing, for example, might seem a doldrum assembly line of models off a conveyor belt, there are plenty of departments within car manufacturing that are creative industries. Departments like marketing and research and development, to name a couple. What we didn't discuss is there are usually activities within every department in all industries reviewing and adjusting their own trajectory, reevaluating and establishing a strategy about where to best channel their resources and time. Strategic planning requires an understanding of where one is and a decision of what overriding vision should guide future decisions. A vision that ultimately rests on the creation of a future state that doesn't yet exist. So, what is strategic planning but a creative industry? Well, today's guest has spent over 2 decades thinking about and affecting change in the arts and culture sector in Toronto. She influenced the strategic trajectory of the Toronto International Film Festival Group as Vice President of Public Affairs and then of Advancement. And today she is immersed in strategy. She is Executive Director of the Canadian Film Centre, a charitable organization dedicated to supporting and promoting Canadian talent in the screen industry. She is co-founder of Black Artists Network and Dialogue, showcasing Black artists and cultural works in Canada and internationally. She is a member of various boards within Toronto's arts and culture sector that, frankly, I don't have time to go over. My strategy for today is to benefit from her knowledge and experience. Maxine Bailey, welcome to Constraints.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Well, let's jump right in. I'm looking for a project, some sort of obstacle that we can start to talk about and unpack.
I would say that we would hearken back to 2020. The world changed for us all as we know it. First with the pandemic, and then secondly with the death of George Floyd in May of 2020. And I was looking for a job at the time. And I knew what I wanted to do, but it was very strange to have those thoughts and desires about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to bring to the cultural world, because I know I want to stay in culture. But then I realized the world had come to a standstill. And I was a COVID hire at the Canadian Film Centre. It was a longer process because everything was done on the little Zoom box. And I realized that when I started my job in May of 21, that not only had the world come to a standstill and stopped, everything had shifted. So starting a new job online, not meeting any of the staff in person, and then also realizing that the power balances had shifted. HR was now king and queen. HR was the one that was going, here are all the rules and regulations of how we come back to work. Here's how we rearrange desks. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about those kind of tactile things. And I realized that there was so much pressure put on the HR professionals in my organization and other organizations that I talked to them. I realized who's looking after HR. So there was that. And then it was also when we got back to work, how do you look after the staff?
When you get back in
to
person.
work. Yeah, because there was the working remotely, and then there was some people wanted to come in. I felt it was really interesting because there were some of the staff who lived in really tiny condos. So it was important for them to come back to work. Mm-hmm. They needed to get out of their house. They'd been trapped there for 2 years. So it was, how do we get them to come back safely? How do we get them to come back and feel welcome? How are their jobs changed? In our role at the Canadian Film Centre, we're training people who want to get into film and television. And so how do you do that with all the COVID protocols? So a great deal of our staff spent time learning COVID protocols and how to do that. That became outside of their job, but something necessary for them to do.
Which now you're back in reverse. So
right.
Speaking of back in reverse, so when you first were hired, how familiar did the actual scope of your role feel to you? Was that an added unknown, or were you walking into this situation and basically just having to deal with how to navigate what you know what to do within the context of the COVID restrictions?
So that's a great question, because what I thought I was going to be doing at the new job as executive director of the CFC and what I ended up doing were two totally different things. Again, it was all the work around the pandemic. It was trying to deal with money because money had come to a standstill. So how do we re-engage people? How do we raise more money? And all the things about dreaming about the change I could impact at the CFC took a backseat.
Because the role of an executive director, or at least the role that you took on, that was really when you say you were looking for a job to do what you wanted to do, that's what it was.
That was my passion.
It was to realize a vision.
Right.
And
right.
What was that at the time?
I wanted to make the CFC more accessible. Our grounds, our campus is up on Bayview in the very wealthy postal code. And we're very lucky enough that we rent the grounds from the City of Toronto for a nominal rent, but it's a heritage property. We have 8 acres we have to look after, and It doesn't always feel very accessible. So I really wanted to to open the doors to the city and the country and the province. I really thought that I had a role in that, and it got sidetracked a little bit. Because we were dealing with all of the fallout from 2020. It was people talking about accessibility, not only physical, but jumping on what I wanted to do, which is make it more accessible. They felt that the CFC was closed. It was a gatekeeper. So there was an awful lot of cleanup that I had to do. I joined the CFC, and 3 weeks after I joined the CFC, there was a town hall, and it was strongly encouraged that I attend the town hall, and there were 85 people of color who were either adjacent to the CFC, had attended the CFC, and they felt this was the time and place that they wanted to talk about how they did not feel included. So
wow.
There was a lot of that kind of work when I first started.
And so your vision was to make things more inclusive.
Yes.
Were you aware of the...
No, I was not aware that this was waiting for me when I first started.
And do you think your vision of inclusivity was a selling point for the CFC when you were hired?
No, I don't think so. I think it was my previous history, working at TIFF, being a good fundraiser. I think those are the things that came into me landing this job. And I have to say, I didn't stress inclusivity. I stressed during the hiring process how the CFC could embrace having Canadian in its name.
This is really interesting, if I can be blunt, because you work there currently.
Yes.
You are the executive director. This seems like a very what's the word I'm looking for? I'm always looking for words.
Basic?
Basic? No, I was going to say like very transparent discussion about your current place of employment. So you had the vision. Basically, your project was to make the place more inclusive. You got side-railed by COVID. Did you hold on to that vision? Did you still keep that vision in mind as you were navigating the restrictions? And of course, events like George Floyd, which you mentioned at the front end.
I would say yes. I mean, I had a dream list. Part of my hiring process, I presented, what I would do in the first 100 days. I had a plan about that. I also had talked about, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year kind of direction that the CFC could have gone into or should have gone into. So I did have a plan. But when I realized all the things that I was encountering when I first joined, I went, we're going to have to tick these away one at a time. And so I had to go away and prioritize what I thought was most important. So we had the town hall. I listened, I learned, made a list of things and concerns that everybody had. And some of those concerns were things that I wanted to change to. So that happened. I came up with, we developed a blueprint, a strat plan. I called it a blueprint. And so we had that for 3 years. And it was incredibly ambitious. And we were still dealing with, the remnants of lockdown, up, down, whatever.
Was it self-reflectively ambitious? Did you make a plan that you didn't really think that it was possible, but let's see what we can get done?
I always believe in being aspirational. I believe we have to be aspirational, or why are we doing this? So it was aspirational. There were a number of things. I was like, I moved forward with some keywords. I wanted us to be relevant. I wanted the CFC to be crucial. I wanted us to be open and accessible. I wanted us to think future. So those are the key words that we use to build this plan. And we incorporate, but we were overly ambitious. But I figured, why not? Why not put it down on paper and give everybody in every department something to work towards? So that's what we did. I do an annual check-in with my board. So that was interesting, and I was quite frank with them. We only got to, within the first year and a bit, I think we got to 55% of what we said we were going to do. Mm-hmm. But it gave us a direction. It gave us a plan. Some things we have since discarded. They're no longer relevant. And some things, and now, as I'm talking to you, I realize I have to present my new blueprint to my board in January or February. So the 3 years have come and gone of that first blueprint.
Wow. And
so now the world has changed yet again. So what new things am I going to put in this print, in this blueprint? So that's where we are right now. But going back to when I first started, I realized money doesn't solve everything, but it's quite helpful. And the way people donated money, or you could get grants at the time, all changed post-pandemic. And arts and culture were not seen as a priority. They were during the lockdown, where everybody resorted to watching TV or listening to podcasts or anything that would help soothe their souls.
Right. But, I mean, that's not all. That's not all of arts and culture, and not all of that is arts and culture.
Yeah. But, I mean, we all kind of resorted to TV or films or music or podcasts or, on my street, we had porch concerts. All the musicians on my street would do these weekly porch concerts.
Right.
So we all used that to soothe our souls during COVID. But then when we tried to elevate that conversation after the pandemic was over, nobody was really willing to listen.
Who's nobody?
Nobody, the funders.
Mm-hmm.
The funders, where we want to continue doing the kind of work. You depended on films and television and web series during COVID. We want to continue doing that work. So how can we renew our relationship, our funding relationship? And they're like, we've moved on to healthcare. We've moved on to this.
Right.
We've moved on to this. So that became a bit of a challenge.
So then part of your, and I have something else I want to talk to you about, but part of your work then was essentially making the argument for arts and culture again in the funding world.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say was much of what you've described in terms of the vision and sort of prioritizing and checking off the boxes and all of this from a project management perspective is very much of an agile approach to project management. And your project, I don't think necessarily has an end.
No, it's ongoing.
It's ongoing. It's never going to, I mean, that word was on the tip of my tongue, but it doesn't matter. I'll get it. At some point I was going to scream it out. But what was I saying? What I was saying was, how familiar is this process in terms of how you dealt with your vision at the CFC versus your past experience with strategic road mapping and creating visions? Is it different?
Well, I think it was different for the staff at the CFC. Coming from TIFF, there was a lot of structure. I mean, it's an older organization, a bigger organization, so there's a lot more structure. A lot of the processes that I was trying to bring into the CFC, just to kind of make sure we were all, singing from the same book, and all had the same vision and direction, was kind of a new way of thinking for the organization, which is much smaller. Mm-hmm. And I found, and they're probably much more nimble than TIFF was because of their size, but having things written down and saying this is the way we're going to do it and we're all going to do it together was probably net new learning.
Oh, interesting. So, I mean, that's a culture change, which is
slow
shift. And difficult.
Yes.
And necessary? Necessary for what?
Necessary for the legacy of the company, necessary for the longevity of the company. I think you need to have a plan.
Right. And a vision to go with it, which before you came, do you feel a vision was lacking or it just wasn't what you were looking to accomplish?
I think the vision might have been a bit tired. And the CFC is we're a great organization. We truly are. I'm founded by Norman Jewison, one of Canada's greats. However, depending just on the legacy and the name of Norman, as opposed to talking about our wins, talking about our alumni, talking about what we offer to the arts and culture and film and television world, I don't think was top of mind for everybody. I don't think that's the way they approach things.
Right.
I think they just got on with the job and did it, as opposed to saying, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Who are we doing it for? And what does it look like in the future? Which is kind of what I wanted to bring to the organization.
And how successful have you been?
Well, I would say...
candid.
That's
the word.
Candid, that's the word. That's the word. Being candid. Yes. I am being very candid. I mean, that's what you'll get when you're dealing with Maxine. I would say that a couple of things have come out of are the change that I wanted to bring to the organization. So we had an endowment, and I found a purpose for the endowment, and I wanted to make sure that anybody who wanted to come to the CFC didn't have any obstacles, because we offer 6 months training. It's intensive, it's full-time, it's hands-on. So anybody who wants to come to the CFC has to be committed for that period of time. And, for them to learn and embrace all the new knowledge they're getting, they shouldn't be worrying about their minimum credit card payment or how they're going to pay their rent. So we found a purpose for our endowment, and we were able to offset some of the tuition costs, and we were able to provide a small stipend so that people could at least, live. So we did that. For the staff, we changed to a 4-day work week. Longer hours during the day, but we realized as we were going through the pandemic that we had a lot of staff who, I believe they call it the sandwich generation, where they've got kids and they've got elderly parents or whatever, and we realized people were always stressed, and having a 2-day weekend wasn't really working for them. So we introduced a 4-day work week, so everybody gets Fridays off. We introduced the offsetting of the tuition. We changed the way we talk to people externally. We updated our website so it was more accessible. People could see what we were doing. We launched an impact report so that we would send it out to everybody all of our alumni, this is what we're doing, this is why we do it, here are some wins. We started promoting work of our alumni online, on social media, plus in our impact report. So we did small wins.
Which cumulatively sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it's still not enough for me, but
Sure.
I think we're still doing these small wins.
Right.
We did some reorging of staff. Some people had a lot to deal with. Some people had some time that they could take on more. We're a very small shop, so we wanted to make sure that we always weren't replacing people. So we wanted to give people some kind of trajectory within the organization. So we did some small tweaks that way. We did lose some staff who moved out of town after the pandemic. So it gave us an opportunity to kind of rethink their roles and what we wanted the new roles to look like. So we've done those kind of things. We've changed the emphasis of our homecoming. It used to be the festival barbecue that we would do. We've renamed it Homecoming, and we've tweaked it so it has more of an emphasis on our alumni and connecting with the industry and our current residents. We wanted to make sure that was important. So we have done some work.
Well, you've been building a lot of, like you said, structure and foundation. It sounds like that may have, not have been as strong or compact as what you've been creating. So, as I said in my intro, and we sort of talked a little bit about before, I think you're just immersed in strategy and vision. And this CFC isn't the only work you're doing in the community. And I was wondering how you felt the vision that you brought to the CFC connects to, or is related to, or translates to, or is completely different from your approach to your other projects in your life?
I would say that when we were founding BAND, that was in response and relationship to Obama's first inauguration. We were so impressed and astounded by south of the border what was going on. We said, who's our Obama? And is there an Obama equivalent here? So that's how BAND started. I just stepped down off the Toronto Arts Council board, but it was really important for me to be working working with artists, grassroots level, finding out what they're doing, what they're not doing. All of my board work, I just recently I was co-chair of the cultural plan that the city just announced yesterday. So again, our organization isn't funded by the city, but I actually want the city to be a better place. And I believe art and culture, and it just brings joy, and it's just so important, I think, for my being, and I think it actually helps other people. So all of the work that I do in all of these other areas all help impact CFC, and also my work at CFC helps impact when I work on those different projects. So I could be a glutton for punishment. I do like being tested. I did work with a really dear friend of mine, and she was a Virgo, and her thing was rules help control the fun. So that's where all the structure comes in.
Yeah.
My take on that is rules help control the fun, but you have to know what the rules are before you can break them. And so that's how I approach a lot of my planning and strategy.
And the rules that you implement, is there something similar between what is your reason when you make a rule?
To make things better, to make things easier to understand. I hate when things are garbled and you have to do this all the time to try and discover or decode what's going on. So I like simplicity. I like clarity. I like to operate with empathy. And I want to also work within the budget that we have. And those are the constraints that I bring to it.
Right. And what's the benefits and the value of the fun?
It gives me comfort. that I know that we have a plan. We have a backup plan. I always have plan A, B, C, and D. So I always need to know that. So if this doesn't work, we have to go here. I need to know about that as I'm moving forward. So it's always about having the backup. It's also about providing everybody comfort. So they might not be initially in agreement with the plan. But if everybody's moving in the same direction, then I think it gives other people comfort. Because they're like, why are we doing this? We never did it before.
Right.
Well, we're doing this because we want to get to this point. We're doing this so we have a better story to tell our funders. We're doing this so that we can reassure our philanthropists that, you know.
So you're comfortable making people uncomfortable.
Oh, yes.
Because eventually they're going to either, I suppose,
Get on board.
And get on board in a, hey, I get why we're doing this kind of way, as opposed to, okay, begrudgingly, okay, I'm going to do this, even though I don't want to. And then I guess it also gives the people that don't want to get on board, you know, they understand why they...
People have choices, right?
Yeah, people have choices.
People have choices. So for the people who are not initially excited about any change, and change does make people uncomfortable. It makes people very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with people being uncomfortable. I'm okay with people pushing back. And in fact, I asked my staff to push back. This is what I'd like to do. Where do you see the holes? Where do you see a challenge? I need them to push back because I don't want a bunch of... I just think that people need to be inspired, engaged, and see themselves in whatever project we're working on.
So the project of CFC, do you envision a time where you're going to be able to say, or you might say, or can you imagine a state where you'll say, okay, I'm done?
Yes, I can imagine that state. I think that state gives, I'm working really hard on that right now, financial stability. It's very important. We've got a number of plans and a number of plates up in the air, so I'm working towards that. I believe most arts organizations in the city need to stop fretting about money on a daily basis so that they're allowed to be able to dream and plan and think long term. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And I think we might be getting close to finding financial stability, which will allow us all to kind of go, what else do we want to do? Do we want to deepen, areas here or not? So yes, financial stability would be, I would just kind of go, yeah. Having a plan, leaving this place, leaving the CFC in a place that somebody else could just kind of step in and continue the work and bring their own ideas to it would allow me to step away.
So, I mean, you've just said it right there. Once you've gotten the budget to execute the plan that, and basically the scope that you've established, that's when your project ends. And so you would be comfortable at that point to move on and find another challenge.
Yeah, I also don't believe people should outstay their time in jobs. And it's a very great-sized organization. It's not too large. It does great work. I don't think I need to stay there forever.
Right.
And my original thought when I started was I'd love to leave the door open for somebody else to come in and bring it in. So,
with a new vision.
A new vision, a new twist.
And again, you're being candid. I mean, do the people that you work with, they understand your perspective on things? Look, I'm here to establish a vision, make us financially stable, so that the next Maxine Bailey can come in and.
I think most of them know that, but I've also working with a lot of people who've been at the organization for a long time. So they must think they might not believe that I have an end date.
Well, they'll just have to wait and see.
They might not believe that, but that's okay.
Right. Okay. Now, we're kind of winding up here. I'm a little curious about your other work in the city, and you're so involved in the arts and culture in Toronto. How, on a bigger scale, how do the visions of the other strategic thinkers that you work with on the different boards and within the sector, how do you find that your vision aligns with others?
I have a really great kitchen cabinet, and I strongly recommend any leader get a great kitchen cabinet. I've been collecting some of these people over the years, and we're comparable, and we're compatible. They're leaders who run other festivals or other, theater. I mean, because I started in theater and I've kind of meandered and ended up where I am. But I've got 5 or 6 people in my kitchen cabinet that we can always go to, we can always call on, we can send out an alert collectively or just individually, like, oh my God, I'm just dealing with this. Have you ever done this? This is my gut instinct. What do you think? And I feel I get comfort from those group of people.
Oh, that's a really nice analogy. All right, final question. It's sort of a new sort of feature I've added to the Young podcast. If you could complete the sentence, creativity is?
Life.
Perfect. Maxine Bailey, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I hope I was helpful.
Yes, you were very helpful. Constraints the Podcast receives resource support from the Alan Slate Radio Institute at Toronto Metropolitan University and is co-produced by Louis Moroney and Mihir Kore. Please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts to automatically be notified when a new episode is posted. Also, follow us on Instagram at constraints_podcast. Constraints the Podcast is brought to you by Hi-Fi Handiwork. Sound advice.